Good morning, everyone. So I have a question before we get started then. Who here likes to waste their time? You know this is a rabbit hole. You don't like to answer this question, but you are stuck now because you know the next question I'm going to ask you is going to really put you on the horns of a dilemma. So who here wants to waste their time? They really enjoy wasting their time. I like to waste my time. No one, right? There's no one here who wants to waste their time. Okay, good. So if I were able to convince you then that something that you were doing was a waste of time, anything for that matter, if I were able to convince you of that, would you still continue doing it? Or would you stop doing it? Come on, speak up. I'll ask the question again. Right? Everyone alert? I know it's Sunday morning and all that, but right? All alert? Okay, well then listen carefully and answer even more carefully. So if I were able to convince you that something that you were doing was a waste of time, would you still continue doing it? Put your hand up if you would still continue doing it. If I were able to convince you, you were convinced. Put your hand up if I were able to convince you that it was a waste of time, you'd still continue doing it. Anyone? No. Huh? What? You would? So then there's no point in me trying. I know what you're doing. I know what you know. I know what you're thinking right now. So even if I were able to convince you that you're wasting your time, you'd still do it. Then I need not bother, should But really, if I were able to convince you that what you're doing was a waste of time, you'd stop doing it, wouldn't you? At least you'd want to stop doing it. And so you'd only do it because you can't stop yourself from doing it. Well then. I'm going to convince you, but at least I'm going to try. I can't say I'm going to convince you, I'm going to try to convince you. So today is one of those days, if you don't like to be convinced, try and sleep through this sermon. Because then at the end of it, I'm going to ask you a question, how come you're still doing that? And you can say, Swaminatha, I fell asleep during the sermon, Swaminatha, so that's what happened. So I couldn't listen to anything you were saying, right? I only observed the precepts, and right at the end of it, I fell asleep. Right? So you could say that, and that could be a really good get-out clause. Now, here's what's worse. What if I would convince you that it's not just what you're doing right now, but what you've been doing the whole year? So we're at the end of the year. This is the last sermon of the year. What if I were able to convince you that the whole of 2024, pretty much everything you were doing was a waste of time? Then you look forward to 2025 so you can keep doing the same things again. Come on, don't insult yourselves. Do you want to be known as a bunch of time wasters? There's a better word in Sinhalese for that. Time wasters doesn't really sound all that, There's a word in Sinhalese for that. That's a nice one. You can make a face and say it. Right? And it really hurts. Really hits you. You know what it is, right? Yeah, but you think it up yourself. If you don't speak or know Sinhalese, there's no point in me telling that word, because then it wouldn't have the same effect. But if you know the word, then you know the word, so you can think of it. Because if I say it now, then you'll go home saying, Swami Namaste called us all. And then I'd be accused of insulting you. But that word is a word that means someone who's a time waster. Right? Someone who, quite literally, someone who eats their time. Now you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Someone who eats away their time, putting it to no good use. It's not even a procrastinator. It's someone who actually eats away their time. That's why people consider it quite offensive. But in any case, if I were able to convince you that all of 2024, that's what you were doing, would you look forward to another year of all that? No, you wouldn't, would you? At least you'd want to do something different. I can do one better. What if I were able to convince you, right from the day you were born, all your lives, not just the last year, the year gone by, but all your life you were doing something that was the waste of time. Then, would you want to continue to doing it for the rest of your life? I'll leave that to you to make your own, to come to your own conclusions and make your own minds up about it. Here's an assumption I'm going to make. The assumption that I'm going to make is that you are all very intelligent people. At the end of this sermon, I will either be proven right or wrong. No, it's all right. You're all intelligent people and you'll always be intelligent people. Okay? It's not nice for me to say that by the end of this sermon you'll be proven right or wrong, because if I were to base my conclusions on your actions after this sermon, then I suppose those conclusions would not be some that might be in your favor. So I'm not going to come to any conclusions, but I really want you to think about what you're going to hear today intently, intelligently, wisely, and profoundly. If you have all come here, ladies and gentlemen, to make a change in your lives, make a transformation in your lives, because there's something that seems to be missing in your life. And it's that missing piece you're looking for. Then you have to allow these words to change the way you think. Did you know that the state of your life right now is determined by the way you think? Simple as that. Simple as that. I couldn't put it any simpler than that. The state of your life right now is determined by the way you think. Nothing more, nothing less. It is not because of what others do or don't do. It's not because of that. It's not because of the weather. It's not because of the economy. It's not because of the way that the country or the nation is run. It's not because of the politicians. It's not because of anyone else. It's not because of the value of the rupee against the dollar or the pound. It's not because of any of that. It's because of the way you think. Now you should all be happy to hear this, because it means that you are the architect of your own life and its outcomes, and how your life unfolds from here on, and how it always has. If we are to hand over those keys, the keys to what happens in our lives, to someone else, that's a very sad and miserable, it's a very pitiful state to be in, because then we become victims. We victimize ourselves. There's no need to do that. If you are a victim, if you consider yourself a victim of your circumstances, and you feel that it is others who have done it for you, done it to you rather, not done it for you, but done it to you, then your presence here is actually of no use at all. That's the first useless thing you're doing, wasting your time by coming here on a Sunday morning. Because you see, I'm not talking to any of the people around you, am I? You have come here because you want a better life. You have come here because you want something different. You feel that there's something that has to change in some aspect of your life. You want a fuller life, a more enriching life, a more satisfying life, a more content life. That's what you want. But you come here alone. If the answer to all your problems are with the other people around you, then you should stay at home and do what? Send them here so I can talk to them and change them, right? But what do? You bring yourself here. Well, that's the right thing to do. Well done on that. You brought yourself here, which means deep down you believe something. What is it that you believe? If my circumstances are to change, if my life is to change, if the world around me is to change, then who has to change? I have to change. By I, what do you mean? The way you think. Simple as that. Can I ask you a little question? When you're happy, what is it about you that is happy? The mind, of course. The mind is what you think, right? When you're unhappy, what is it about you that is unhappy? It's the mind again. Again, it's the way you think. So your happiness is determined by the way you think. Your unhappiness is also determined by the way you think. Who wants to be unhappy? No one does. I need not ask the next question, who wants to be happy? Okay, everyone here who wants to be happy, blink. It's as obvious as that. You're all going to be blinking. That's why I said that. You need to don't put your hand up. There's not a single soul here who doesn't want to be happy. In fact, that is what you're doing on this planet, trying to be happy every moment that you possibly can. That's what we all want to be, happy. That's why you're looking forward to the next year, so that you can achieve some of the things that you couldn't do in your previous year. Something that just didn't do it for you, you are hoping that in the next year, it'll all fall into place, things will all work out, and you have plans now set forward for the next year and all that. You have your dreams, you have your goals, you have your ambitions, you have things you want to do. You've probably made your list for the next year, your bucket list of things you want to do and all that. Maybe there were things in the last year, 2024 went by, the time went by, but there are certain things that you just couldn't get yourself around to doing, and then you have put them into the next year's list, so on. All of these things you want to do, ladies and gentlemen, because you want to be happy. And when you say, I want to be happy, what part of you? Your nose? Your ear? No. It's your mind. So why are we all here then? One reason, because we want our minds to be happy. What is your mind if not what you think? Is your mind anything more than that? Your mind is what you think. So you are here because you want to change the way you think. All right, then why don't you just change the way you think while you're here? Why are you here? Why don't you just change the way you think and stay at home? Because it's not as easy as that, is it? When you're feeling sad, when you're grieving, is it simply just a matter of, all right, I'm going to stop, and it stops? It's not like that, is it? In 2024, give me a show of hands if you've lost someone that was close to you, so a loved one. Right. You can put your hand down. Well, I give my deepest condolences, but perhaps it would have given you an opportunity to consider your thoughts, how it affected you, how such events impacted you, the effect that it had on you. If you were sad when that happened, that's only because you were not able to control the way you think. Because no one wants to be unhappy. No one wants to be sad. Grief is not done out of choice. Grieving happens. No one chooses to grieve. Do you think anyone chooses to grieve? I would really love to grieve next year. Is that on your list of things to do for 2025? No, of course not. No one wants to suffer. No one wants to be sad. No one wants to be afraid. No one wants to feel jealousy. No one wants to feel anger. Who here wants to be angry next year? Put your hand up. I really want to be angry. I couldn't do that enough this year. I'm going to do it right well enough next year. Nobody wants that. And if you don't want that, the people around you don't want that, 10 times over. Ask them, if you don't take my word for it. Nobody wants that. But then why were you angry this year? Why did you grieve this year? Why were you sad? Why were you disappointed? Why were you frustrated? Why were you irritated? It's because you couldn't control the way you think. It was your mind that went through all this. See, as we look retrospectively at the year gone by, you might have a lot of things that you think, right, I did this, I could do that, I built my house, finished work on that, I refurbished my flat, right, did work on that, I bought a new car, put my child to a good school, right, went on a trip, right, we started that new account, you got married, we've started coming to the sermons, right, these are a bunch of things that you've done in the last year. Give a bit of thought to see what your mind went through over the last year. Put yourself to a side and think about what your mind went through in the last year. It was doing one or two things. It was either happy or it was unhappy. These are the only two states your mind was in. Other than that, it was asleep. Simple as that? Agree? It was either asleep or awake. And if it was awake, it was in one of two states. Happy or unhappy. Simple. The sleep part, there's nothing we can do about it. Because our bodies need rest. Some people think the mind needs rest. The mind needs no rest. We'll come to that another time. The mind needs no rest. The body needs rest. The mind needs rest from ignorance and attachment. Yes, that the mind needs. Not from anything else. But the body needs rest. So when the body needs rest, of course, the mind has to rest along with the body. That's why when you fall asleep, both body and mind. But then when the times you're awake, you're in one of these two states, either you're happy or you're unhappy, and none of you here wish to be unhappy. But if I asked you to work out what percentage of your time you were happy versus you were unhappy, now immediately you have a target for the following year. Let's say you were happy 50% of the time, you were unhappy the remaining 50. Okay? What might be your target for the next year? I haven't even precepted you and I've already started writing on the board. Excuse me. Happy and unhappy. 50% here, 50% here. That was 2024. What's your target for the next year? Don't tell me next year I want to buy a new car, I want to get married, I want to buy a house, I want to build another flat, right? It's not that you want in the next year. This is what you want in the next year. What's that? Increase this and? In 25? And what to do with this? Naturally, reduce this. That's what you want in the next year, right? So tell me, what does a successful year look like at the end of next year? At the end of the next year, if I were to ask you, was that a successful year in comparison to the previous year? How would you work out the math? This is the math. Simple as that. Do you need to hire an accountant to do this? No, this is the math. You are your own accountant. This is the mind, nothing more. You'd look into your own mind and you'd ask the question, how much of the time was I happy? How much was the time was I unhappy? If it was less unhappy than the previous year and more happy than the previous year, that would be a what year? A successful year. Simple as that. See, it all boils down to these two numbers, ladies and gentlemen, nothing more. Simple as that. So what does an unsuccessful year look like? Well, is it not obvious? If this went down and this went up. So if by the end of the next year you were unhappy 75% of the time and you were happy only 25% of the time, what kind of year would that be? An unsuccessful year. But what if at the end of the year you have 2 more houses? You have 2 more houses, but you're 25% only happy and 75% unhappy. What would you say that is? A successful year? You've got a fleet of cars, not just one. Come on. You've got a fleet of cars by the end of next year, but you're only happy 25%. The previous year you were happy 50%. Would that be a successful year? Of course not. It would be a successful year for the car salesman who sold you those cars. Yes. What if your Facebook friend count went up by 5,000? You went traveling the world, got to know lots of people, right? Your friend count went up by, 500, say a little bit more realistically. It went up by 500. 500 more new friends on Facebook. But your happiness is at 25, your unhappiness is up 75. Successful year? Successful year? No. Your friend count went down. Now you only have 10 friends. When you had 100 at the start of 2025, at the end of 2025, which is the end of next year, your friend count went down from 100 to 10, but your happiness has gone up. Would that be a successful year? But wait, you've lost your friends. You've lost your friends. Would that be a successful year? So what is the determiner, whether it's a successful year or not? Is it your friend count on Facebook? No, it's the number of friends on Instagram. It's not the followers that you have on Instagram, is it? What is it then? It's your happiness count. That's what it is. This is what it boils down to. Okay, you're engaged. Your plan is next year to have a wedding, get married. So you think, if I get married, I'm going to be happy. Next year, it will be a successful year. All right, you get married next year, but at the end of the year, your happiness has gone down from 50 to 25. Quite likely to happen, but who am I to say? Okay, now you're married. So beginning of the year, you're unmarried, you're only engaged. At the end of the year, you're married. Successful year or not? Can you make that call based on the fact that you're married? Can you make that call based on the fact that you have more money in your account? You have more property? Can you? No. What is it based on? These are the simple numbers. Simple numbers. Quite simply, this is how you work out whether your life is a successful life. If this is how you work out whether you are successful by the end of the year, tell me how you're going to work out if you are successful by the end of your life. Say you live for 75 years. 80, Thank you. Please keep me right, okay? When I make some silly mistakes, please put me right. 120, thank you, right. So So for the newcomers, I got myself into some hot water, right? When I said the other day, imagine you live up to 75. Some people are like... So I revised that. And I said, all right, 80. And then few more were like... So now we settle on 120. Anyone? I mean, I can push it up 150. Okay, so you live till you're 120. Okay, so you lived 120 full, long years. What is it that determines whether you have lived a happy life, a successful life? Is it the number of years you have lived? No. It is this. What were you when you were born? So when this was 1 year old, when you were 1 year old, and now you are 120 years old, it's these numbers that will make all the difference, nothing more. If when you started you were 50 and now you are 25 at 120 on the happiness scale, and your unhappiness is of course the remainder, that would be a nice long life, successful life. That would be an unsuccessful life. Well, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Most people are born crying, and they die crying. Need I say more? I rest my case. Then you have to ask the question, what good was it that I lived till I was 120? If my happiness has not gone up. These are the important questions about life. You know, you have been given a project. You are your project. This is a project that you're going to be doing till you're 120. You've done some of it already. Some of you have done a third of it. Some of you have done a half of it. Some of you have done 3/4 of it. Others have almost completed it. Almost. Well, some of us might not live to see the new year. Who knows? Do you think 2024 has already seen all the deaths that it's going to see? No, today is only the 29th. There's the 30th, there's the 31st. 2 more days. Anything could happen. It's all about your mind and what you think, how you think. See, this is why your presence here is important. Here, I don't feed you. I don't give you money. I don't lend you money. I don't give you gifts. I don't teach you how to become a billionaire, a millionaire. I don't teach you any of that. I don't give you education. I don't give you any of those things. I don't give you career guidance. I don't teach you any of that. Here we only talk about one thing and one thing alone. That is the only thing that matters at the end. So you must ask yourself whether this is a worthwhile investment of your time. Sunday morning, coming to Rajagiriya, coming to Gateway College, sitting here, listening to these talks, and trying to take something from them into your lives. If, as you say, all that matters at the end is what your numbers are on the happiness rating, if that is what determines whether you have had a successful life. That's why, I gave a number of examples. You're going to be married at the end of the year, you're only engaged this time. That does not determine whether you had a successful year or not. It's all down to your happiness rating. So that's what we're here to do. Learn how to be truly happy. It's not about changing the circumstances around you. I can't control any of that on your behalf, and frankly, you can only do very little to control them anyway. Can you stop the rain by taking an umbrella with you? Can you? If you take an umbrella, is God going to stop raining for you? No. You can't change your circumstances. Sometimes the rain is going to be so strong that your umbrella is not going to stop you from getting wet. It'll just about maybe keep your head dry, but the rest of you is going to get wet. Has that not happened to you? You've taken an umbrella, you think you're very prepared for it, but it rains cats and dogs. A torrential rain comes along and you're as wet as a duck. That's what I'm saying. You can't control your circumstances. There's only one thing you can do. No matter what the circumstances are, if you can figure out, how can I be happy regardless of what goes on around me? Now that is a successful man. That's what we're here for, ladies and gentlemen. Dare I say, this is probably the only thing that you're doing that is good use of your time. I say that, I know it's a bold claim to make. I know. Immediately you might actually disagree with me. Whoa, Swaminathan, you can't go that far. Well, that's only because I haven't completed the sermon yet. Wait. This is probably the only thing that you're doing that is worth your time, ladies and gentlemen, because pretty much everything else you do in your life is a mere waste of time. This is only a statement because I haven't given you the facts yet. Wait for it. I'm asked sometimes, why did I come to robes? Simple answer, I don't want to waste my time. It's not because I couldn't afford a lay life. I could afford to feed myself and 10 more families without a problem. That's not me boasting about myself, it's me boasting about how true the Dhamma is. That's what I'm boasting about. How true, how valid, how powerful the Dhamma is. This teaching, this philosophy. Here's a man who could feed himself and 10 other families, and still it could transform my life in such a way that today I'm penniless. Don't have a penny to my name. Because I realized that is not where happiness is to be found. Are you ready? I'm going to show you how. These are your vital stats. This is what matters. Not any of the other things that people will tell you matter. It's not how many PhDs you have. It's not your degree that matters, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the year, you have a degree. Let's just say, this is your last year in university next year. You're doing a 5-year medical degree. Next year is your last year. At the end of the year, you're going to get yourself a degree. And you're going to qualify as an MBBS qualified doctor. But this is your happiness. At the start, you were 50, now you are 25. Was that a successful year? You got your degree, yes, you are now a doctor, and people celebrate that success, but you're unhappy. What's the point? Have you not heard of doctors who go commit suicide? No, what's the point of that degree then? Have you not heard of rich businessmen? Business moguls. They take their own lives. Now, what's the point of that? What's the point of being a successful or a rich businessman? This will determine whether you will continue to live or whether you are at the end of your tether. This is what makes people go crazy. When people say, I'm depressed, it's when this happens. That's it. Not the money, not the amount of money in their bank account. How simple it is, but yet how elusive it seems to be. When someone is depressed, this is what has happened. When someone feels like they want to jump off a cliff, this is what happens. Not for adventure, because they've had enough of life. When someone feels that they want to see whether they could stop a running train, this is what happens. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. It's not all these other things that people seem to think determine the happiness of their lives. If you have a child at home who wants to get into a relationship that you don't approve of, some of you might be in such a situation. You have a child at home, he or she is looking to get into a relationship that you don't approve of. It's not because they want to get into a relationship, it's because they are in this state of mind at the moment. They want happiness and they believe that this potential partner can bring them happiness, and so they're going after them. You know what? People don't want to get married, they just want to be happy. They don't want to get divorced either, they just want to be happy. People don't want to earn money, they just want to be happy. Nobody wants to be rich and neither do they want to be poor, they just want to be happy. People don't want to be educated or uneducated, they just want to be happy. That's all. Imagine there was a cancer. If you got it, you become the happiest man in the world. Wouldn't you want that cancer? I know, bizarre example, but think about it for a second. If you got that cancer, you immediately become the happiest man in the world. Wouldn't you want that cancer? I would want it. I'll be the first in line saying, oh, you wait, first me. It's not that people want to have a cancer or don't want to have a cancer. It's not that they want to be treated of their cancer. That's not what they want. They just want to be happy. Simple as that. So all these things that you seem to be doing in life, it's not that you want actually. It's what's behind that. Happiness is what you're all looking for. And that is why your lives are so diverse. Because everyone's doing something else. You've got a different rule book, a different playbook. You're trying different things. What you're trying today, someone else tried yesterday, but you'll try nonetheless. What you're trying today, someone else will try tomorrow, but you're trying it nonetheless. And they'll try it as well. That's the way the world works. Is there anything that you're trying today that someone hasn't tried before you? Take human history. Since the beginning of, or the dawn of civilization, is there anything you're doing today that no one has done before? Is there anything on your 2025 list of goals that no one has tried before? Anything? Nothing. Well, it's all been tried before. And the jury's out. It didn't make them happy. But that doesn't stop you from trying it. You're not at fault, ladies and gentlemen. It's not because you're stupid. It's because you have not been given the facts. That's not your fault. That's my fault. You can't beat a man up because he's ignorant. That's not his fault. It's the fault of the people who know. They must share what they know, so that you can go from ignorance to wisdom. You can see the light. And once you see the light, then things will start to change about your lives. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through your life, back the past year. Let's take a trip down. Just the last year. As I draw things on the board, as I explain things to you, I want you to go back into some of those experiences and ask yourself, why did I do it? And did it help me achieve what I really wanted in my life? Did it serve the ultimate purpose? And what is that ultimate purpose? to be happy, simple as that. A man gets married to his partner because he wants to be happy. 2 years later, he gets divorced. Why? Because he wants to be happy. So what was it that determined his action? Happiness. That's it. That's it. You know, if you want to be successful in life, ladies and gentlemen, keep that as your target. Keep that as your target. Don't take targets that other people give you just because they say so. Someone walks up to you and says, become a rich man and you'll be happy. Don't take it at face value. Ask yourself whether that will actually give you happiness. If it's a rich man, ask them, are you happy now that you're rich? Are there never moments when you are unhappy? Don't just take things that people give you, because you know what they give you is an indoctrination. The moment you take it, you become that. So let's learn then. How does one actually be happy? Once you know that, you become invincible. Then you become powerful. This is the best knowledge to have, the Dhamma. So before we do that then, let us all take a moment to bring our palms together. In veneration of the teacher who discovered this on his own and then took the time and effort to share this with all of us. This truth has withstood 2,500 years, and today we are so fortunate to receive it from our teachers. Thanks to the Buddha who found it, who discovered it, and proclaimed the truth. Let this veneration be to His holy name, as well as to ourselves as we renew our pledge of allegiance to the Noble Triple Gem and promise ourselves that once we see the destination, we will tread steadfast to that goal diligently. Let us chant the Namaskara, bearing that in mind. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. If you had a science test coming up, would you study math? What do you say? If you had a science test coming up, would you study math? No, right? Why? Duh. It's a science test. Then you should study science. So what you study depends on what you want to do with that. If it's a science test that you have coming up, then it is science that you have to study. You have a test that's coming up, ladies and gentlemen. That test is going to be a test of happiness. People will keep throwing things at you just like they did in the last year. Circumstances will keep on changing around you just like they did in the last year. Who knows? Your wife today might sometime next year say, you know what? I've had enough of this. What? No? Is that not how it has happened to others? Your husband might walk up to you and say, you know what, I've had enough of this. This is not working out. I've thought long and hard about this. No, can't do this anymore. Or you find out that they have another relationship and you want to bring this to an end. Excuse me. You only have good things you have planned for the new year. You don't plan for these things, do you? I mean, who plans for that? To find out that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Who plans for that, for your partner to come and just drop the bomb on you? This is not working out. No one plans for that. No one plans for that, but those things happen nonetheless. You have one plan, God has another plan for you. Sometimes these two plans don't run together, they don't align. Whatever your plan is, it's God's plan that executes itself at the end of the day. If your plan aligns to His plan, then you're happy. If your plan doesn't align with His plan, then you're unhappy. Some people call him God, others call it Vipaka. That's it. Sometimes people ask me, Swaminatha, you're a Buddhist monk. How can you talk about God all the time in sermons? Well, you want to call it God, you call it God. You want to call it Vipaka, call it Vipaka. You want to call it whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really. If it helps you make sense of it better when I call it God, let's call Him God. It's fine. It's not like a forbidden word. As long as we mean the same thing, it matters not what we call it. A spade by another name, that's all. Spade's a spade's a spade. A rose by another name smells just as sweet as you know it. So if you have a test that's coming up, your test is going to be something like this. Okay? Your test. I'm sorry, I'm going to say some of these things which it might hurt some, but this is not intended to hurt. This is only intended to help you prepare for your exam, your test that's coming up next year. Okay? All fair game? All right. They say in love and war, all is fair. This is love. So, all is fair. Okay? Next year you might find out that someone that's close to you has a cancer. It could be you, it could be someone close to you. That is a happiness test. That's what it is. A what test? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a happiness test. Now these are, what we call past papers. No, honestly, these are past papers. They were done previously by previous students of this class. Previous students had to do these tests and they have given me the past papers, so I'm sharing it with this class. So next year, 2025, I know you have some goals. I'm going to throw you some and you tell me whether you're prepared for that. Okay? Think of the person you love the most in this world. That person. You find out they have a cancer. It's a terminal cancer. They've had it for the last 6 months. Only now you find out. Doctors give at most 2 months to live. Happiness test. Are you ready? Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your mother, perhaps it's your father, maybe it's your sister, perhaps your brother, perhaps your child, your son, your daughter. Cancer. It's not really a cancer. From your perspective, it's a happiness test. Are you ready? Next, number 2. You find out that the person that you entrusted your life to, your life with, the person you thought was your soulmate, he/she has been cheating on you for the last 2 years, and you only just find out. Well, guess what? 2025 is the year you're going to find out about that. That's a happiness test. Are you ready? Don't look at me like that, like I'm the devil. I'm just sharing with you things that people go through in life. If these are things that don't happen to people like you, you tell me now, let me know. Okay? If these things don't happen to people like you, just put your hand up and say, Swaminatha, those things don't happen to people like me. Or people like us. You have to take the collective here. Then I will stop using these examples and I will start using some other examples. But none of you are immune from these things, as far as I can tell. Am I right or wrong? Here's another one. Your son, your daughter, who's still a teenager, elopes. Runs away with someone. That's a happiness test. Are you ready? If you want your son or daughter to stop doing that, you stay at home and bring them here, I'll talk to them. If you want your mother, your beloved, to not get the cancer, you stay at home, send them here, and I'll tell them how to do that. If you want your loved one to not cheat on you, you stay at home, send them here, and I'll talk to them and I'll help them do that. Or else, if no matter what happens around you, let those things happen if they have to happen. I want to be resilient. I want to be strong. I don't want to fall when those adversities strike me. If that is you, if what I've just explained is you, then you come here and let me talk to you. Let's put another one there. 2025 is the year your house is going to get burgled. Next year it's going to happen. One day you're going to get home only to realize the windows have been broken, your TV is gone, all your precious possessions, they have either been destroyed, smashed, or taken. This is the house that you loved. You're house proud. You're a very proud house owner. You love your house, but you find out your house has been burgled. 2025 is when it's going to happen. Here's another one. 2025 is the year your wife is going to get pregnant and she's going to have a miscarriage. That's a happiness test. Are you ready? Or your daughter is going to get pregnant, and then 6 months later, she's going to find out that she's had a miscarriage. She informs you, you are the brave mother who has to now console her and be strong at the same time. If you start weeping, if your eyes start welling up, if you start sighing inside, you have failed the happiness test. Once again, if these are things that don't happen to people like you let me know and I will change the topic. We'll talk about something else. 2025 is the year your business is going to come crashing down. The business that you'd built up For the last 25 years, it was your inheritance from your parents. You put your heart and soul into it. You worked so hard on it. But a few bad decisions along the way, the economy takes a downfall and your business goes bankrupt. "2025 is the year that's going to happen." Are you ready for it? That is a happiness test. These are past papers. You've all taken past papers, haven't you? When we have exams, we say past papers. These are past papers. Why do I say these are past papers? These things have happened plenty of times in the past. Your seniors have taken those tests. They don't necessarily have to be seniors by age. The very fact that they've gone through that test is what qualifies them to be your senior in that way. Sometimes they may be younger than you, but they're your senior in that way because they've gone through that experience. And guess what? They failed. Here's another one. Someone close in your family. Well, everyone's close in your family. But someone who's really close to you, they get dementia. Now they can't do anything for themselves, you have to be there to look after them. They forget who you are. They forget who you are. Maybe your husband, the man who you've lived 50 years for, the man who you've been with, the wife, the woman you've been with for the last 30 years, you've been married, lovely, very happy marriage, but 2025 is the year they become demented. 2025 is that year. Are you ready? These are happiness tests. Before I proceed, once again I'll ask a question. If these are things that don't happen to people like you, they may happen to other people, but they don't happen to people like me. Swami Nanza, in that case, please let me know. I'll apologize, I'll take everything I've said back, and we'll talk about the rabbit and the tortoise for the remainder of this talk. Because you don't need the sermon that I'm going to give you in just a moment. Well then, let's be honest. You have just silently admitted that any of those things, one or more of those things, I repeat, one or more of those things could happen to you at any point in the next year. In fact, even all of them could happen to you in the course of the next year. Just imagine if all of them happened in the next year. Your daughter runs away. Your father gets a cancer. Your house gets burgled. The other daughter who got married 2 years ago, she was pregnant and now she's strung you to say that she's had a miscarriage. Your business goes bankrupt. Tell me, what would most people who've gone through all 5 of those things do? Let's not say most, many. What do you think they might do? What might they consider? You say it out loud. What might they consider? Huh? Starts with? Well then, here's another thing on the agenda for 2025. I mean, we should bring the year to a close, shouldn't we? To a close. I mean, I can understand. Someone who's gone through all that in the span of 12 months, I can understand if they have no refuge, then most certainly suicide is on the agenda. That's not a surprise. Because people are doing it all the time. So the more people that do it, the more people know about it, the more people start to consider it. Right? And today we have media, so it's all over the place when something like that happens. Everybody knows now that suicide is an option. Those days, going to a counselor was an option. Go to the temple, talk to the monk, go to the church, talk to the priest. Those were the options those days. But these days, suicide, that's an option. Did you know? It's been trending lately. It's the latest fashion. Suicide. I can throw a couple more. You find out that your 20-year-old is doing drugs. He's not just doing drugs, he's selling drugs. He's a village drug lord. And you only just find out he's doing drugs. And you only find out when the Narcotics Bureau knock on your door. That's when you find out. See, what if all these things were to happen to you in the next year? How can you realistically say, Swami Nahansa, the S word is not for me then? If all of those things were to happen to you, you don't need all of those things to happen to you, ladies and gentlemen. 2 or 3 of them is plenty. If 2 or 3 of them happen to many people, most people, then that is what they consider. I can't bear all of this pain. It's just too much. This is so overwhelming. I can't tolerate all of this. It's just too much. There comes a point. There comes a point where the balance tips. There's only so much you can talk to someone to help cool yourself down. And how many times can you go and talk and cry your eyes out and weep with someone? And they can hold your hand, they can be by your side, and they can take time off of work and be with you. But every day, they can't do that. How many times can someone pat your head, stroke your head, and say, it's okay, things will be better, just hang in there? If they don't have the dhamma, what can they give you? What can they say? It's all right, all things shall pass. Yeah, but right now I'm going through it. What do I do now? Well, you just have to bear it. Just hang in there. Hang in there how? I'm at the end of my tether. How can I hang in there? This is what people go through. Year on year, suicide rates are up. What makes you think you're immune? Speak to someone a year before they committed suicide. Young people, successful in their careers, had youth on their side, had everything going for them. They wouldn't have even considered, not even dreamt of taking their own life. But fast forward a year, and they've jumped off a bridge. These things can happen in such a short period of time. These situations can develop so rapidly, ladies and gentlemen. You just need a few things to be unbearable. That's all. It doesn't take that much for most people. For a young girl who's experiencing her maiden love affair, for a young girl, say she's just 15, she's experiencing love for the first time. And she's poured her heart out. And because she's naive, not had this experience before. She thinks this is it. This is what has made my life meaningful. I never got this from my parents. I never got this from my siblings. Never got this from another person. This is what fills me up. I feel complete. Little does she know that he's a player. What if this is your daughter I'm talking about? She's only 15. The day she finds out, initially she's going to go into denial. No, that could not have, no, that cannot happen. No, he cannot do that. It's impossible. He would never do something like that to me. The parents will keep on convincing. Now, it's not like that. Look at the facts. Look at what he's done. See, I've got the camera evidence to show you. He's married. He's got kids. Look. But the mind needs happiness. The mind is hungry for happiness. The mind is hungry, thirsty for happiness. And she thinks that he made her life complete. At some point, if you as a parent, ladies and gentlemen, in these moments, you are helpless. I understand your situation. It's a very sorry predicament that you find yourselves in, because you know what? You can't let that affair continue because it's not suitable, but you can't force it to stop because you know what else could be on the books for her. Parents here, may you never find yourself in that situation. To never find yourself in that situation, you've got to give your children the dhamma. Teaching them at school alone does not do it. But what if you find yourself in this situation? How are you going to face it? Lately, if you look at the stats, most people who've committed suicide are not elderly people. It's young people between the ages of 16 and 35. Young people. So I'm saying, if this were to happen to you, if you are the family member of one of these people, and if this is on the agenda for 2025, and that is your happiness test, ladies and gentlemen, what are you going to do? Once again I say this. If you are going to tell me, Swaminatha, these kind of things don't happen to people like us, speak now or forever hold your peace. Speak now. Put your hand up and say, Swaminatha, these kind of things don't happen to people like us. We are immune to such situations. In my life, everything's perfect. I know that I will never be cheated on. I know that my family members and in myself, we will never get a cancer. So why do you take health insurance then? I don't understand that. My house is never going to get burgled. How can you tell? Don't you feel like a drop of dew at the edge of a grass blade? That's how fragile your lives are. In fact, that's how fragile your happiness is. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not really talking about life. I'm talking about happiness. It's okay to die if you can die happy. Because we're all going to die. Let's be honest. We can't stop death from happening. These sermons are not to stop death from happening. Is it? No. It's to help you die happy. That's the only thing I can do. And if you die really happy, you will not be born again. Because you only keep coming back to complete unfinished business. We've spoken about this in the past. People are only born again because they were not happy the last time they tried, so they keep on trying until one day they can be happy. Because once you come into samsara, you will not exit samsara until you discover happiness. The rules are very simple in this game, although we try to complicate it too much. It's not really that complicated. Very simple rules. It's like a game of snake and ladders. Get to 100 and you're done. In the same way, get to happiness and you're done. But if you keep doing the wrong things, then you come across the snakes. And then you come swirling down. But these Dhamma talks, what do? These are those ladders. If you understand it. These are the ladders that take you up to 100. So with all these planned, well, you don't have them planned, but someone has. They are planned for 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Now you're not looking forward to the new year, are you? And you were pretty excited. Yeah, we're going to launch the fireworks, right? We're going to have a party, invite everyone, and 2025 is going to be such an exciting year, and we're really looking forward to it. Not after today. Oh, what a wet blanket this Sunday sermon was. I don't want to pull the wool over your eyes. Let's face the facts. I asked you the question, if you are going to tell me that these things don't happen to people like you, I'm more than happy to apologize, withdraw my words, and we'll talk about something else. But if you're telling me that you are also susceptible and vulnerable to any of the above, maybe even all of the above, all in the span of 1 year, how are you going to bear the impact? What is your refuge? Right. Well, then I must offer you an answer. So listen, and listen well. I cannot stop 2025 from happening in your lives. I can't stop that from happening into your lives. It will happen. 2025 is the collective total of all of the things that are going to happen to you. That's what 2025 is. It's not a new year. It's all the stuff that's going to happen to you. Isn't it? What was 2024? Was it a year? No, it was just the stuff that happened to you, right? Well, 2025 is no different. It's the stuff that's going to happen to you. I can't stop 2025 from coming your way. It's going to come. Whoever thought a tsunami was on the agenda for 2014? 2000 when? 4. Whoever thought that? No one planned for that. What if it's going to happen in 2025 again? If you were there when it happened, you know what it was like. What if Easter Sunday happens again? What if? What if terrorists start having a field day? A bunch of terrorists from some part of the world, they decide, well, Sri Lanka is a good place for us to have some fun. Then, what if they're plotting for it from next door? Just imagine yourself in that situation. You're in a bus, right? One guy in the bus, he stands up and he starts chanting something. And he's got the trigger in his hand. You're in the bus. How are you feeling right now? Put yourself in that situation. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a happiness test. Are you ready? Once again, you tell me those things don't happen to people like us, and I will not talk about it. He opens his vest and explosives. He's got the trigger. He says, don't anyone raise a finger, and he starts chanting something. You know this is it. Everyone starts screaming. It's a total commotion in the bus. And you're there. At that moment, you can't stop thinking about your family. You can't stop thinking about your friends. You can't stop thinking about your loved ones. All these things start flashing in your mind. You're helpless. You can't run. You're in a moving bus. Then what do? What if you're on a train and this is what's going to happen? This is not scaremongering. Don't think I'm scaremongering you. You tell me these things don't happen to you, people like you. I won't talk about it. We just don't like to think that bad things happen to people like us. But we know that it's entirely possible. We just don't like to think about those things. That's why these things don't come up around the coffee table. You don't talk about this over dinner, do you? What if? You don't talk about these things. You talk about the games, the cricket, the football, what happens. That's what you talk about. You don't talk about these things. But anyone who's been a victim of a suicide bomb blast, I mean, they never think that it is they who's next in line. They don't think that, but it happens. That's why I say, what if next time, it's at your local temple, it's at the local church, it's at the local get-together. Who knows? Wherever a lot of people get together, that's a prime location for anyone who wants to put up a show. Fireworks can happen in two ways. Some up in the sky, some others on the ground. What if you're the victim? These are the things you have to be prepared for, ladies and gentlemen. So listen and listen attentively. Listen intently, because you have something to get out of this. Because when the test of happiness comes your way, if you're not ready for it, then you have failed, and that is an unsuccessful life. Sorry. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot about the mind and the consciousness. Last week in particular, I explained to you that a chitta, or consciousness, arises to fulfill a necessity. All things in this world are born out of necessity. It is always to fulfill a necessity. Once again, you know that there's a pen in this room because there's a necessity to write. If there was no necessity to write, there would not be a pen in this room. Your chittas are born because there's a necessity to perceive. You wish to perceive. You might struggle to actually agree with me initially, because you might think, well, I don't have a necessity to perceive. Perceiving happens. Do I really have a necessity to perceive? Well, if I ask you to shut your eyes for the rest of your life, put the rest of your life to aside, if I ask you to close your eyes for the next 2 hours, that would be very uncomfortable. You might do it for a couple of minutes, but then after that it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes uncomfortable because your mind wishes to see. If you remember last week, I drew the eye and asked you, does the eye see? Remember? Maybe I should draw it up there. Apologies for those at the back of the room. It's still not working, is it? No. We drew the eye and I asked you the question, does the eye see? Does it see? It doesn't see. Because seeing happens in the mind. Seeing is a moment of perception, ladies and gentlemen. That's what seeing is. If someone asks you what is to see is to perceive. What is to hear? It is to perceive. What is to smell? It is to perceive. Not the physical act of, not that. The actual experience of smelling. That experience. That which you cannot do when you have a blocked nose. That you can't smell anything, but you can still inhale, but you can't experience smell, right? So the sensation of smell is what I'm talking about. These sensations, they are moments of perception. So you can know one thing for certain. Every time you're seeing something, hearing something, smelling something, tasting something, or feeling something, your mind is at work. Because seeing doesn't happen at the eye, hearing doesn't happen at the ear, smelling doesn't happen at the nose, tasting doesn't happen at the tongue, and tactile sensations, these things don't happen at your fingertips. So much so that if you were to take a needle, a sharp needle, and press it against your finger, it feels painful, doesn't it? That's not actually what the finger feels. Your finger doesn't feel anything. That pain, that sharp pain that you experience, I mean, we could try it out. You might not have a needle on you, but if you want to, you can bend your finger backwards. You don't have to, I'll do it for you. See how kind I am? I'll endure the pain on your behalf, right? So if you were to bend your finger backwards, you will experience some pain here, right? You'll experience some pain here. That's a wrong statement. That statement is incorrect. There is no pain here. This is not where pain happens. Pain is a perception. It's in the mind. If the mind were here, you chop off the finger, you're mindless. I mean, if you know, you understand that the mind is not here, right? These are nerve endings. So as you bend your finger backwards, but you feel like there's a pain here, don't you? If you were to hold your finger to a flame and you feel the burn, that sensation does not actually happen at your fingertip, although it feels like it. That is a moment of perception. Can I give you an example of how you might be able to use this to your benefit, to your advantage? When you exercise and your body says, no, I can't do that anymore, it's too hurtful. Let's say you're doing your push-ups. Right? You plan to do 50, you've done 2. And your body is saying, enough. You start feeling the aches and the pains in your body. And then if someone says, why have you stopped? You say, oh, it hurts here, it hurts there, it hurts everywhere. It doesn't really. That hurt is not in any part of your body. Your mind perceives it. Meaning, if your mind is willing to endure that, you can go on for a bit longer. Now I know doctors in the room will go, but, Swaminathan, you have all these chemical changes that happen in your body. These are your body's natural indicators to say that you have to stop. When it hurts, you have to stop. You must not continue. I'm not talking about the medical science behind all of this. What I'm saying is, if you had to continue, right, despite the pain that you're experiencing, this pain, although there's a physical element to it, it's actually perceived in the mind. In fact, this is what pain looks like. It's a chitta. It's a mind. It's a mind moment. It's a perception moment. So, seeing doesn't happen in the eye. We talked about this the other day. If seeing was something that happened in the eye, then I have to ask you, what is it that you see? Then you have to say light. So light doesn't go any further than the back of the eye. Then what you have are electrical signals. So why do you need any of that if seeing happens at the eye? Seeing doesn't happen at the eye. Seeing happens in your mind. In fact, when you see, it is a mind moment. It is a perception moment. So sight, sound, smell, taste and touch, the 5 senses through which you experience the world around you, these are all perception moments. And why do you perceive? Because there's a necessity to perceive. Close your eyes for the next couple of hours, By the end of 2 minutes, you'll be asking me, do I have to continue with this? Why is a dark room a punishment? Because the mind wishes to see. But the eye would be very happy because the eye can rest. Don't you sometimes stay in your bed? You know it's time to fall asleep, but you pick your phone up, right? And then you're on your Facebook, you're on something else, and you're just scrolling away. Right? And your eyes, they start getting tired, it starts getting watery, right? Tears start flowing, and you know you have to close your eyes and it's time to sleep, but you'll keep on going on your Facebook, on your laptop, whatever. But you know it's not good for your eyes, but you still do it nonetheless, because it's not your eyes that wish to see. Your eyes want to shut, but your mind wishes to keep them open. Because the mind is what sees. So, here's the takeaway from that little discussion there. Anytime you see, smell, hear, taste, touch, ladies and gentlemen, that is not your 5 physical organ senses doing anything. Yes, they are collecting stimuli from the outside world and directing them towards the mind, but the actual experience of seeing does not happen anywhere this side of the mind. It does not happen at the optic nerve, it does not happen at the fovea, it does not happen in your iris, it does not happen on your lens, it doesn't happen anywhere. Seeing, what you see right now, you can see me, you can see my robe, it's red. This seeing happens in your mind. If the mind were to stop right now, you would not see. Simple as that. Because red is not a color in the outside world. Did you know that? Most of you do. Red is not a color in the outside world. All there are here are vibrations. These are electromagnetic waves vibrating. These vibrations reach your eye, and there are receptors at the back of your eye that are sensitive to the various vibrations. Some vibrations stimulate the cone cells, others stimulate the rod cells, and the cone cells come in 3 flavors, red, green and blue. So there are certain wavelengths that stimulate the red cone cells, and when they stimulate, there's an electrical impulse that travels down your eye, your optic nerve. This is basic science. We've learned it for biology. Doctors will all agree with me. This is a simple science. But at no point during that process do you actually see red, because red hasn't happened yet. Red is not happening here, by the way. Does that make sense? Red is not happening here. It's not here. The very first time red appears in this world is when a mind moment is born. So only where there's a chitta can there be red, yellow, green, purple, any color for that matter. Which is proof then that to see is to perceive. Right. Let's carry on from there. All clear on that? Perfect. So this is perception so far. But I have been bold enough to claim that you don't just perceive, you have a necessity to perceive. Now, here's a subtle point that I want you to pay attention to. It's not difficult, but you need to pay attention so that you can grasp exactly what I'm trying to get across to you here. These chittas, if you're unfamiliar with this word chitta, think of it as an instance of perception. That's what a chitta is, an instance of perception. These chittas, they don't come for no reason. Nothing in this world exists if there was no purpose for them, for their existence. Chittas are the same. Chittas exist because there's a purpose, and that purpose is perception. The purpose is not merely perception, ladies and gentlemen, the need for perception. Think about this. That's why I said it's a subtle point, but if you can grasp it, then it'll help us to continue from this conversation. This pen, I'll bring the analogy again. This pen is here not because this pen can write. This pen is here because there's a need to write. Because there's a need to write, we go looking for something that can write. Those are two slightly different things. Do you see the distinction between the two? I'll say that again. This pen is here in this room, on this desk, not because it can write. So why aren't all the pens here right now? All the pens in the world should be here right now if this pen is here because it can write. Right? Don't you think so? If being able to write qualifies something to be on this desk, then every single pen in this world that is a whiteboard marker should be on this desk right now. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? Yeah? So why isn't every single whiteboard marker in the world on this desk right now? Because that's not the qualification to be here right now. The qualification is not in the pen. The qualification is that there's a need to write. That need to write is fulfilled when I have one pen. That's why we stopped at one. Do you see the distinction between the two? Would you like me to go over it one more time? Okay. This pen can write. All in agreement? Yes. Is that why it's here? Is the question I'm asking you. If merely because this can write, then so must all pens that can write be here on this desk. But are they? No. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you ask me why, well, that's because you have thought maybe Swami Nuhase might like to use different colors. So there's a green pen, there's a black pen, there's a red pen, there's a blue pen. But not all the pens in the world are here right now. So the ability to write is not the qualification to be here. What is then? What is the qualification? The need to write. The need to write is fulfilled the moment you bring me just one pen. That's why we stopped at one pen. Why is this duster here? Is it because it can erase? Then where are the other dusters that can also erase? Shouldn't they also be here? So why did we stop at this? It's here because there's a need to erase. And that's why we stopped at one duster. Why is there just one fan? What is the qualification? There's a need for this. Why is there only one Swami Nuhanse? Am I the only one who can preach? Thankfully. I'm helping you here. Thankfully? Not, yes, thank you. I'm ungrateful. Thankfully not. So why aren't all the Swami Nuhanses here right now? Because being able to preach is not the qualification to be here. That is a secondary qualification. What's the primary qualification? Your need to listen to a sermon. So then we go looking for someone who can preach. So what if I had a really bad throat and I couldn't talk? Then what would happen? Would I still be here? Then I wouldn't. Someone else would come and take this place. So what is true in both of these situations? The primary qualification, that is the need for a sermon. Are you all clear on that point? Yeah? Anyone who's not clear, please put your hand up. Because I need you to understand this before we proceed from here. Wonderful. Then, let's come back to the chitta. Chittas are able to perceive. That is not their qualification for being here. Just like pens can write, it is not that qualifies a pen to be in this room. Chittas can perceive. It is not that qualifies them to come into existence. It is its mother. What is the mother of all inventions? Necessity is the mother of all inventions. So the necessity for a chitta is the mother. The mother gives birth to the child. So chittas are born, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a necessity to perceive. Do you all agree with me on that? Is that clear to everyone? All good? Because now I'm going to move on to the next part. All good? Chittas are not born just because they can perceive. Chittas are born because there's a necessity to perceive. Right. Let's then talk about the necessity to perceive. Because here's something else that you know. If it is the necessity to perceive that gives rise to chittas, when there is no necessity to perceive, chittas will not be born. Thankfully, that is how arahants are born. An arahant, we talked about this briefly in the last talk, an arahant is the product of an effort, of an endeavor not to suppress chittas. Although some people think it is that. There's no point in trying to suppress chittas for as long as there's a need to perceive. For as long as there's a need to perceive, it will be born again. It's like in a pool of water, a bucket of water, you have plastic balls that have air in it. You can keep them suppressed for as long as you like, but the moment you take your hand away, what's going to happen? They're going to float. They're going to surface. In the same way, there's no point really in trying to suppress the chitta. See, some schools of thought might have this idea that what you're supposed to do as a Buddhist or in Buddhist practice is to not think about anything. To not think about anything. To basically empty your mind of everything. Don't think about anything. When you think about something, that's it, you've lost. Some schools of thought might promote that sort of teaching. So, for instance, if you look at those flowers, that's it, you've lost. You must not look at those flowers. So that's why people sometimes meditate by closing their eyes. They think that to meditate, closing your eyes is a requirement. Because it is people who have typically, now I can't say if it's not a generalized statement, I'm just saying, typically, when people try to shut off the five senses, typically, not all the time, typically that's because they believe that bliss, Nibbāna, is where nothing is perceived. That is not so. An arahant is not someone who does not perceive anything. An arahant is someone who has no necessity to perceive. But perception happens nonetheless. Because they have no necessity to perceive, they have no necessity not to perceive either. These are both states of desire. To want to think and to want not to think. In both these situations, there's a wanting, there's a desire. Then you've not won. You understand what I'm saying? If attachment, wanting, desire is what we have to eradicate, yeah? How does someone who wants not to think, who has a desire not to perceive, how can they be a victor? Because they still want not to perceive. That's still a wanting. That's what you have in the Arupavachara Brahma worlds. Or actually, even beyond that, when you go into the Akinchanyayatana, Nevasanya, Nasanyayatana, these are Brahmic worlds, but let's not get into all that. But there are spheres of existence, there are abodes of existence where beings exist. And what they have believed as their philosophy is that perception is the problem. So they try not to perceive. There are some schools of thought where they believe that if you perceive X and you perceive Y, there's a moment where there is no perception between those two moments. Like a sub-moment, a moment between two moments. It's that moment where you have Nibbāna. There are many ways in which you could interpret that. I agree. But because you're here as students of this teaching, I can only share with you where I have found my peace. So it's not for me to say one is right or one is wrong. But here's what I can say. Chittas are things that can perceive. They will keep on arising not because they can perceive. That's not the reason. They will keep on arising because there's a necessity to perceive. If you can eradicate the necessity to perceive, then chittas will no longer arise. I've talked to you about this in the past. There are two kinds of Nibbāna we talk about. There's the Sopadisesa Nibbāna and the Anupadisesa Nibbāna. Don't worry about the words, don't worry about the terminology. To put it very simply, one is where an Arahant, this is a normal human being, an average human being becomes an Arahant, but they're still alive. And then they pass away. So when they pass away, I can't continue that line, of course. That's the end. This is where they were just an average human being. Of course, they fulfill the noble path, and at one point they become an Arahant. At that point, all defilements have ceased. Right? But they still perceive. See, these things, they keep happening. Here, they happen with defilements, more or less. From this point forward, no more defilements. In other words, no more necessity to perceive. That's the beauty of this, ladies and gentlemen. Here, there's a necessity to perceive. Perception is a necessity. From here on, there's no necessity to perceive. But it keeps on happening because it's in line with the analogy I gave you last week, which is, once you've pumped fuel into your tank, if the car's on, it's going to keep on running until the fuel runs out. But you don't pump any more fuel because you have no more journeys to go. So once the fuel is done, you're done. In the same way, an Arahant will continue to exist, to survive, to be alive until their bodies are intact. Once they die, then there's no longer a necessity to perceive. When did that necessity pass away? Is it at this point or at this point? When did they achieve a state of not requiring perception? This point or this point? This point. The point that they became an Arahant. This is Nibbāna, this is Parinibbāna. You might have heard these two words. This is Nibbāna. This is Parinibbāna. The birth of an Arahant is Nibbāna. The passing away of an Arahant, that is Parinibbāna. What do we celebrate Vesak for? Three things, don't we? We say it's the birth of the prince. This is where he was born as an average human being, like you and I. In many ways, but not in every way, of course. Then, at one point, he becomes an Arahant. That is a special kind of Arahant, so we call him a Supreme Buddha. Because he has no teacher. He has to discover it all by himself. That is the second auspicious occasion. This is the second reason we celebrate Vesak. Then there's a third reason. That is his Parinibbāna, where he, the Arahant, passes away. So, I'm talking to you about perception, I'm talking to you about the necessity to perceive. When he was born as a young prince, did he not have a necessity to perceive? Did he not? Of course he needed. He had. At one point he wanted to perceive the truth. Initially he was a young man, he was very youthful, he wanted to perceive everything that every other youth would wanted to. He got married, he had a child, he enjoyed his life. Right? So those were also perceptions. He used to sing, he used to dance, he used to learn the skills that was required for a king in the making. Those are all necessary to perceive. At one point, he realized that his destiny was to become a Buddha. At that point, he wanted to perceive the truth. That is also a wanting. The wanting to perceive the truth. That's also a necessity to perceive. But here's the thing, that necessity is a good necessity because that is a necessity that stops every necessity. Otherwise, you might know you'll have this question at the end of this sermon. Swamin Mahansa, you're talking about the necessity to perceive. We have the necessity to perceive the dhamma. Is that also bad? You are bodhisattvas because you have the necessity to perceive the dhamma. But this is the only necessity that is worthwhile having Because once you fulfill this necessity, which is the necessity to perceive the Dhamma, you will no longer have any more necessities. It pulls the plug. That's what happened to him. As a Bodhisattva, he renunciated, he meditated, he explored the Dhamma, and he discovered the Dhamma. And at one point he becomes the Buddha. At that point, ladies and gentlemen, what stops? Chitta stop or the necessity for chitta stop? It's the necessity for chittas that stop. But chittas continue because he's still alive. 45 years later, his body can no longer sustain itself. And the body dies. As the body dies, because there's no more necessity to perceive, another one of these is not created. That's the moment we call Parinibbāna. Those are the 3 moments that we celebrate as Vesak. We say it is the birth, the becoming, and the passing away of the Buddha. But really, this is what's going on. Perception with necessity, perception without necessity, and no perception at all. That is what Vesak is. So next time someone asks you, what do you celebrate Vesak for? Now you can give them a more profound answer. You don't necessarily have to tell them it's the birth, the becoming, and the passing away of the Buddha. You can say, well, now that you ask. Huh? You can say, it's the birth of perception with necessity, and then the birth of perception without necessity, or the eradication of necessity, the eradication of perception, the eradication of the necessity to perceive, and then the cessation of perception. This is the cessation of necessity to perceive, and this is the cessation of perception. Does that make sense? Right, I have another part of the story. Let's continue. Right, one of the, these are all building on top of the other, so I need you to keep with me. That's why I give you opportunities to put your hand up if any of this doesn't make sense. And don't be ashamed or afraid to put your hand up, because if you don't understand, then there's probably a few more people in the audience who haven't understood it either. Okay. So a few hands went up there. So I'm going to just go through it one more time, just to be clear. Your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and your body, these are your sense organs that collect stimuli, and they bring those stimuli to our brains, which is the interface between the outside world and the mind. This is not what the mind looks like. The mind does not look like anything because it's an energy, but I need something to represent the mind. So I draw it like this. We call it a chitta. A chitta is a moment of perception. What are the things that we perceive? Sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Color is a good example of that. My voice is a good example of that. I am not projecting my voice to you right now, ladies and gentlemen. These are only vibrations of matter. Take out the matter in this room, you won't hear a word I'm saying. As I vibrate my vocal cords, air particles vibrate. Those vibrations transfer from one particle to the other, and they transfer to the particles between you and me, and then they transfer to the particles just by your ear, and then your ear canal. There's no voice there. There's no voice in the nerve that takes signals from your ear to your brain either. There's no voice. There's no sound, in fact. It's just vibrations and then electrical signals. But by the time it reaches your brain then does some magic. It's not really magic, but let's call it magic for the time being. And it interfaces between that electrical signal and your mind, because what it does is it gives the mind an imprint of that happening, that event. And the mind perceives it as a sound. So sounds only exist where minds exist. This doesn't hear anything. Not because it doesn't have a ear. This doesn't hear anything not because it doesn't have an ear, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't hear anything because it doesn't have a what? A mind. Because hearing only is something that happens in a mind. You don't need a ear for that. You actually don't need a ear to hear. If you were able to stimulate the part of your brain, the auditory center of your brain, if you were able to stimulate that in some way, you would still hear things. You don't need eyes to see. When you bang your head somewhere, what do you see? Stars, right? You don't need eyes to see that. But your mind's still functional. That's how you see, that's how you smell, that's how you taste and so on. Right. So we've discussed that. And then the part that I spoke to you just a moment ago, things, chittas don't happen just because a chitta can perceive. The purpose of a chitta is to perceive. The task, the job of a chitta is to perceive. That is what it does best. But a chitta does not come into being just because it can perceive. It comes into being because there's a need for perception, a necessity to perceive. These are two different things. To do and the need to do are two different things. Do you all agree? To do and the need to do are two different things. Some do, some don't. Who suffers? Those who have the need to do, they suffer. Because if you have a need to do, it doesn't matter whether you do or not. You still suffer. Because when you do, you still want to do it again. Because you have a need. When you don't do, you're not doing it. So you suffer anyway. I'm just throwing things at you. I hope you're picking these things up because they are so profound. Thanks to you, I'm going through this is a very blissful experience right now. I'm sharing things with you I've never said before and I've not thought about before, but thanks to our collective merit, miracles happen as they always do on Sunday mornings. Who suffers? Those who do or those who don't do? Neither. It's those who want to do that suffer. Those who want to do and don't do, they suffer because they want to do. Those who want to do and do, they still suffer because, well, after you've done, you have to do it again and again and again. Nothing can be doing constantly, right? Can we just be doing something constantly? No, everything is done and then you have to do it again and then do it again and do it again because we live in short bursts of things. Nothing is continuous. Why is nothing continuous? Because everything is done with a chitta. A chitta is not continuous. It arises and passes away. Okay? So, chittas are born not because it can perceive. It's born because there's a necessity to perceive. All good? Beautiful. Right then. Now I'm going to talk to you about this necessity to perceive because that seems to be the culprit of all of this. Let's just leave this on the board, the necessity to perceive, the need to perceive. Can I say need for perceive? Need to perceive. I'm going to simplify something. So don't look for technical accuracy right now. Don't look for accuracy right now because I've simplified something just to get the point across to you. Okay? All right? Don't look for accuracy. It's not accuracy we need right now. We just need to get the concept. Later on we can fine-tune things. What I've drawn here, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think of this as your mind base. Mind base. What do I mean by the mind base? The mind base is where everything that is required for a chitta to be born gathers. It's where you have all the factors, all the ingredients, all the causes for a chitta to come into being. This is the bed on which a chitta arises. This is the mind base, so it's the base essentially. On this base, chittas arise. Why do chittas arise? Because they have all the requirements. They have all the causes for the effect that is a chitta to manifest. Now you understand, we've talked briefly about the principle of cause and effect. Right? If there are no causes, there's no effect. The chitta is an effect. Give me an example of something that is not an effect. An example of something that is not an effect. There are no such things. Everything's an effect. If you can talk about it, if you can conceive it in your mind or in the physical world, it's an effect. The only thing that is not an effect is Nibbāna. That is not an effect. Because there are no causes that sustain it. That is why it is everlasting. Anything that is driven, anything that is supported by causes will only exist for as long as the causes exist. Because it is sustained by the causes. Yes? Okay. So a chitta then is the same. No exception. A chitta is born out of the presence of causes. Do you recall a sermon we titled Present Moment? There was a sermon that we did on the present moment. And there I explained to you that the present there, it does not refer to time. It's not a temporal reference. Present. It's not present versus past versus the future. It's present as in present. There, it's here. Like when you take the register in the class. Tim, are you present? John, present. Sam, present. Sunil, present. Like that. When the teacher asks if you are present, it's not talking about time, right? They're talking about the actual availability. What's available? So a chitta is an effect of causes that are present. If the causes are present, then what you have is the present moment. The moment that is present. Meaning the effect that is present, because those are the causes that are present. Okay? Now, a subtle point, so I really need you to pay attention. Chittas aren't born just because they can perceive. Chittas are born because there's a need to perceive. I'll quickly draw an analogy. You are here today as a human being, not just because your mother can conceive. Your mother wanted to have you. Let's assume. Okay, me. Okay, right, me. I'm here today, you're here today because your mother hopefully wanted to have you. Not just because she could conceive. Yeah? So, the necessity to have you came first. You came later. Yes? Right. So a chitta, if the chitta is the child, then the mind base is the mother. A chitta is only born if the necessity to perceive is where? In the chitta? How can the necessity to perceive be in the chitta? Was the need to have you in you? Are you here because you want to be born? Forget karma, vipaka and all that for a second. You're here because your parents wanted to have you, right? That's why you're here. Not because you wanted to be. You wanted to have yourself. That sounds really weird. You are here because your parents wanted to have you. In the same way, folks, your mind base is where the necessity to perceive exists. Once again, although it is a chitta that can perceive, okay? Although it's a chitta that can perceive, the necessity to perceive is where? It's in the mind base. So when the mind base has the necessity to perceive, what might it do? It creates the instrument of perception. That's what it does. What is the instrument of perception? A chitta. Simple as that. If you want to cut, what do? You go find the instrument to cut, which is a knife. If you want to write, what do? You go find the instrument that you can use to write, which is the pen. So, if there's a necessity to perceive, what might the mind base do then? It creates the instrument to perceive, and the instrument of perception is what we call a chitta. So, why are chittas born then? Is it because one, chittas can perceive, or two, because there's a necessity for perception? Which one? A necessity for perception. Where does that necessity exist? Is it in the chitta or in the mind base? It's in the mind base. So if you wanted to stop these chittas from arising, where might you have to get to work? Here or here? Mind base. So then if you have a desire to become an arahant at some point, remember I drew the timeline just a moment ago. There were 3 things we celebrate for Vesak. Yes? The birth of... Actually now you can start talking about the mind base. Put the chitta to aside. Let's talk about the mind base. This is the birth of the prince, which is, in other words, the birth of a mind base with the necessity to perceive. Very good. Here he becomes a Buddha. What do we have now? The mind base with no necessity to perceive. And then ultimately what do you have here? No more mind base. The Buddha teaches us the Dhamma to get to this point. You don't have to do anything to get to this point. It happens. Let time do that. There's nothing you have to do to enter Parinibbāna. Nothing at all. Time does that. Because there's a certain karmic energy that keeps this mind base intact. There's an energy that keeps the mind base intact. At some point, this energy can no longer sustain it, and at that point, it disperses. For human beings, it's our lifespan. So by extension then, for other forms, it will be other lifespans. Our mind base is also sustained by our physical bodies. It is supported by that. That's why when your physical form is broken, it can no longer sustain the mind base. Which is how an arahant dies or passes into Parinibbāna. Okay? So I'm kind of filling in a few question marks you might have here and there. So these are some touch-ups. Not the actual thing, but just a few touch-ups for those who might be curious about a few things here and there. But here's the important part. Most of you, if not all of you, would be here still. Somewhere here. Working your way in this direction. Any arahants in the room? I have to check, you know. Mustn't assume. Right. If there are no arahants in the room, then there's one thing I can tell about all of you. You are all on this side of the fence. Yes? Tell me about your mind base. Tell me about your mind base. You have the necessity to perceive. That's why you can't keep your eyes shut for 2 hours. That's why putting you in a dark room is a punishment. Because you have a necessity to perceive. That's why if one of your ears go deaf, you go running to the doctor. Ignoring the fact that you need your senses to survive, right? But you also have to watch TV. You also have to listen to music. You have to, have a conversation with people because those things are things that the mind wants to perceive. So because the mind wishes to perceive, just imagine your sense of taste stopped working. Just imagine that. And I promise you that I will not feed you anything that is harmful. Because otherwise you might say, well, Swaminas, I use my sense of taste to make sure that what I'm eating is not going to harm me, right? Or going to do me any damage. And I promise you that I will check everything you eat and make sure that it is good. Would you be happy to sacrifice your sense of taste? You wouldn't, because you still want to taste things. What good is the sense of taste? What does it serve you? What purpose does it serve? Have you ever thought about it? Your sense of taste serves absolutely no purpose other than feeding the mind base. Absolutely no purpose. It's not like you need it so that you don't stop, you stop bumping into things, right? For that, all you need is your sense of sight and maybe your sense of hearing, but you don't need the sense of taste for that. The sense of taste is a really classic example of something utterly useless. But you know how much of your time you spend trying to satisfy your sense of taste. That's why as you cook, you check. As you stir the dish, take something. Because it has to not only be good, it has to taste good, mustn't it? Yes. Go home and open your freezer and have a look at some of the things you have in there. And you tell me what ice cream's doing in that fridge. What's a bottle of soft drink doing in your fridge? How does that serve you? How is that useful? Utterly useless. Because you have it there because you want to satisfy your sense of taste. Your sense of taste is not something you need for your sustenance. If I can promise you that, because I know what you say, Swaminatha, what if I eat a cockroach, for instance? Then I can taste that something's really bitter. So I use it to save myself. Oh, yeah, okay, I get that. But, those are some... When was the last time you put a cockroach in your mouth? Come on. Those things hardly happen at all, right? Most of the while, you use your tongue just to please your mind base. Why so? Because your mind base has a necessity to perceive. The funny thing is, folks, it matters not what you perceive, as long as you can perceive. How sad. Here, shall I tell you something? Why did you laugh? Today is Sunday. That's what I was going to tell you. See, I was going to share with you something utterly useless. But you still wanted to know what I was going to tell you, didn't you? Before I told it to you. You still wanted to know what it was. That's how your mind base is. It matters not whether what you are going to perceive is of any use to you. There's a reason for that. I'll talk about that another day. All these things have reasons. Why? This, my dear ladies and gentlemen, is the Buddha's teaching. There are no holes to pick in this. It's perfect. No holes to pick in any of this. It was pitched perfectly, and it's the perfect philosophy. Because it was taught by the perfect one. He couldn't have preached it any other way. There's a reason why it matters not what you perceive. But I'll talk about that another day. For now, I just want you to understand that it really matters not what you perceive. Someone says, say you're walking with a friend down the alleyway somewhere, and someone says, "What's that really bad smell?" What's the first thing you want to do? What's the first thing you want to do? You want to smell it. You go, where? Shall I do one better than that? See, you know it even before I say it. You've lived long enough, haven't you? You hear someone passing wind. You hear the noise. Someone just passed wind. What's the first thing you want to do? Right, let's move on. I dropped my case. Let's move on. You know. You know because, it's not you. It's not that you're bad. You're not like, disgusting people. No, you're not like that. It's not you. It's the mind base. To the mind base, it does not matter what you perceive, whether it's good, it's nice, it's bad, it's ugly, it's smelly, it stinks, doesn't matter. Someone holds say an old sock that has not been washed for like months. Say, hey, look at this. Someone holds it. What do you tend to do? You take a whiff. Why? Mind base, curious. Express curiosity, in other words, the need to perceive. That's what curiosity is. Truly, it matters not what it is you perceive. So then, this mind base, this is the fellow that wants to perceive. But the mind base cannot perceive on its own. It's a bit like this. Your body needs nourishment, it needs food, but you need your hands, your arms to go and grab something. So you need an extension of yourself, right, to go and get what you need. In the same way, the mind base, although is what needs to perceive, it cannot do it on its own. So what does it have to do? It has to create chittas. Because chittas are the instrument that does the job of perception. And it does it so well. So when we talk about rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara and vijnana, we are talking about a chitta. Which also then means that in the mind base, there's all the nutrients, the nourishment, the food, the requirements, the prerequisites, all of that is there to create this. To create this. Now here's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a really interesting part. Let's just say there's some object that grabs your interest. I'll share part of this story with you today and we'll continue next day because I'm conscious of time. Let's say there's something that's interesting, a flower or something. It's interesting. Your eye, of course, picks up the light reflected on it. Optic nerve carries it to the brain. And then the brain interfaces with the mind base. Okay? Now, all of this is going on not because they can happen. Why is this all going on? Bring it back to the mind base. Because the mind base wishes to perceive. It's the mind base that created the brain. Don't forget that. These are all extensions of the mind base to do its dirty work. Your entire body, every cell of you, was a creation of your mind base. It's the master. What you see in the mirror is a mere slave. The mind is a master. This mind base is what does everything. That's why these Sunday mornings are the most precious investments of your life. Because here's where you learn. Tell me another class where you learn about the mind base. Did you learn it at school? At the workplace? They paid you lots and lots and lots of money at the workplace. But did they teach you about something useful to you? No. Here you come empty-handed. But you learn the truth about yourself. That's what I'm saying, folks. Do you still question why I came into robes? Is that still a question to you? Why I have chosen this life? Because this life is a dedication to learn about the mind base and to tame the mind base. So it doesn't have all these silly, unnecessary necessities for perception. Because until that can happen, there is no entering Parinibbāna. Or Nibbāna for that matter. That's what I commit my life to. Every waking moment of my life is I work on my mind base. I focus on this. I focus my mental energy on this. I focus my physical energy on this. I contemplate this. I practice the dhamma. I apply the dhamma so that it heals the mind base. While most of you are out earning money, it does nothing to heal this. Or doing jobs does nothing to heal this. Building property, playing games does nothing to heal this. Going to school does nothing to heal this. Nothing. So you can't attain Nibbāna by doing most of what you did over the last year. That's why I said that at the beginning. You have to decide whether what you did in the last year was of use or was of no use. If happiness is what you seek. As I talk about happiness quickly before I proceed, I'll just point one other point here. Do you recall from our very first sermons, we talked about the distinction between happiness and pleasure? Yes? Let me make use of this opportunity to explain to you the difference between happiness and pleasure by using this point. Pleasure is where, when the mind base has a necessity to perceive, it sends a chitta off. It creates a chitta with intent to perceive something. On its journey, it perceives it. Let's say there's a mind base. In the mind base, there's a need to perceive this object. So it sends a chitta off. Hey, off you go. Go perceive that for me, please. And the chitta goes, it perceives it. And then, as it arises, it passes away. Pleasure happens here. It's a temporary moment where this chitta was able to take what the mind base wanted from the outside world. Just a glimpse of it. But the moment this chitta has done its job, what does it do? It passes away and we are back at the mind base. Just because you saw this object doesn't mean you no longer want to see it. Because where is the need to see it? Is it in the chitta or is it in the mind base? It's in the mind base. So the need to see it is still in the mind base, not in the chitta. It's the chitta that saw it, not the mind base. And even still, It was only a momentary glimpse of whatever object it was, be that a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a touch. Remember what we said? A sight is merely a perception. A sound is a perception. Smell, taste, touch are perceptions. So these are perceptions. See? That's why I started at the beginning. A chitta is an instance of perception. So a chitta is born, an instance of perception, and immediately afterwards a chitta passes away. And we are back at the mind base. It has done no good to the mind base because the mind base still wishes to see the object. And it's almost like you want to see something and you open your eyes and quickly close your eyes for a second. Like this. When you blink, it's the same thing that's happening here. Every time, this is blinking once. The eyes open, you see, and your eyes close. But because you still want to see, what must you do again? This is one worker at a time. This worker's gone out, seen it, and it's come back and reported, I've seen something. But here at the base, it wants to see again. So what must it do again? Create another chitta. So another chitta is fired, still with the intention to see. It wants to see this object. So because there's a vexation here to see that object, that vexation is relieved during its life cycle. Because that's a momentary relief from vexation, which is an experience of what we call pleasure. So you see, vexation, experience, and relief from vexation, and you have pleasure for one moment. But you're back at the mind base. The mind base is still not content. Because the mind base still wishes to see. So what must it do again? Set another chitta off. It goes away, it sees, and it comes back again. Each of these moments gives you a moment of pleasure. But do you see that pleasure is something you'll always have to keep looking for? You can never be content in your pursuit of pleasure. There is never a day, ladies and gentlemen, please understand this, where you can have enough pleasure and that's it, I'm done. That day will never come. Never. Before that day comes, the sun will rise from the west. If that ever happens, this will also happen. But just as the sun will never rise from the west, there will never be a day where you can have enough pleasure and be content, because it's not the chitta that wants to experience it. It's the mind base. But the chitta is loaded with vexation. It's loaded with vexation. It goes off looking for the object that the mind base wanted to experience. It takes a glimpse of it. At that moment, there's a relief from vexation, and the moment it does that, it passes away. And at the mind base, you have nothing. So it has to do it again, and again, and again, and again. Ladies and gentlemen, behold samsara. And again, and again, and again. That is samsara. Give me samsara in 3 words. Again, and again, and again. When can you ever be satisfied? What is the mechanism for satisfaction here? Is there one? Is there a mechanism for satisfaction here? There isn't. Because the mind base wants, but you give the mind, or the chitta. He is asking, this is who you're giving. Because there's no other way to give the mind base other than through a glimpse of whatever the object is to the chitta. But the moment the chitta experiences it, it passes away. This is the lifetime of that experience. That's it. That's it. And during the course of that, it experiences a moment of relief from that vexation, which is what you call pleasure. Now, what's the difference between pleasure and happiness then? This is pleasure. You're dealing with chittas. Happiness is on another level. It's when you can eradicate the necessity to perceive that object from the mind base. That's what real happiness is. Do you see how they are worlds apart? Yes. You cannot be happy. You cannot be happy. It's impossible to be happy by doing what you're doing. That's what I want to convince you. That's what I said. If I can convince you, I asked this question right at the start, that you have been wasting your time, would you want to continue doing that? You be the judge of that for yourselves. Folks, this is what you've been doing. When you wanted to watch TV, it was the mind base that wanted to watch it. But it was through a chitta that you watched TV. That's why you experienced a moment of relief. Because these chittas were loaded with vexation. With attachment they arose. Because there's ignorance here in the mind base. Ignorance is in the mind base. When there's ignorance in the mind base, the chitta arises with attachment. Tanha. The attachment to experience the object. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Take chocolate. That's why you're never content eating chocolate. How many chocolates have you had so far? Now do you understand why there's never an end date to that? How many hours of TV have you watched by now? Why did you have local televisions and then you bought Netflix? Because of your method of trying to find happiness. It's fundamentally flawed. Natti me saranang anja. Buddho me saranang varam. There is no refuge for beings in samsara other than the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. Buddha is to eradicate the necessity to perceive from the mind base. That's why it is called Sachitta Pariyodapana. Every day at the end of the sermon, you hear that from Swami Nahanse after you do your worship? Yes. Etang Buddhana Sasana. It is to eradicate necessity from your mind base, ladies and gentlemen, not the mind, not the chitta. We don't deal with chittas. There's no point in cleansing a chitta because you need not worry about cleansing a chitta because a chitta only lasts as long as a chitta lasts. You can't even count it on the clock, how long it lasts. The moment a chitta arises, even before you've said it's passed away. So there's no point in trying to cleanse a chitta. Your work is on the mind base, which is where ignorance is. So until and unless you work on uprooting ignorance from this environment, removing ignorance from this space, there's no hope. We will always keep going on in samsara. I asked you to go back down memory lane throughout the past year that's gone by, 2024. Tell me what you did. How many hours of TV have you watched by now? How many bars of chocolate have you eaten by now? How many puddings have you dug into by now? How many outings have you had? How many kilos of pasta? How many liters of ketchup? How many pizzas? How many? How many more before you're done? If you're a smoker and you want to give up the habit, there's no point trying to work here. It's here you have to work. You won't win by trying to work here. You can suppress it for a while, but the moment the cigarette is shown to you again, another friend, peer pressure can quickly throw you back there because the need to smoke is still down here in the mind base. If you want to become a teetotaler in the new year, stop taking alcohol. There's no point trying to work here. You can suppress it for a while, but here requires willpower. Here, you don't need it. I win. The Buddha wins. If you want to fight here, you are dependent on your willpower. Because through sheer willpower, you're going to have to keep suppressing these desires. Patience, they say, is a virtue. I say patience is a weakness. The fact that you have to be patient is a weakness. Yes, patience is a virtue, I agree. But the fact that you have to be patient, that's a weakness. Clear the mind base, you no longer need patience. So you tell me then, how many years of living the life you live is going to help you find happiness? 10 more? 20 more? Do you still question my intention of becoming a monk? I was done doing useless things. Happiness works down here. Pleasure works up here. You can never make a man content by giving them pleasure. They'll always keep coming back for more. But happiness is once. Do it right, that's it. You're forever happy. If you feel I have wasted your time this morning, you tell me. If you have a better explanation of how life works, of how you work, of how your mind works, I'm all ears. Please share. Do share. Here's what I know. Natti me saranang anyam. Buddho me saranang vara. Buddha is cleansing the mind base. Dhamma is the doctrine that helps you do that. Sangha is the practice of that doctrine, day in, day out, until Buddha happens in your mind. That's why when we take precepts in the morning, I say, renew your pledge of allegiance to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, because they are your only refuge. This is an oath that we take, not for the Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, it is for our own sake. For our own sake, we need the Buddha. The Buddha doesn't need our flowers. He doesn't need our oil lamps or our joss sticks. He's not someone you can please by giving external things, because he cleansed his mind base. That mind is always happy. It is not dependent on anything. It's unconditional happiness. But do you see how your happiness is always conditional? That's why it does not warrant calling this happiness. You must call it pleasure. Happiness is something totally different. It's on another level. I speak with conviction. Because I have experienced the joy that this brings. And today I have explained to you, ladies and gentlemen, this is what's going on in your minds right now. This 2024 was a bunch of these things. What do you think 2025 is going to be? More of the same. 2026? Shall we look forward to 2030 then? How about 2050, when they say Buddhism is going to be proliferant throughout the world? Wouldn't that be nice, something for us all to celebrate? Let's be happy for everyone else, but let's not us take the Dhamma for ourselves, shall we? What would be the point? Just imagine the whole world had Buddhism, had understood the philosophy, but not me. What would be the point? Everyone in the world is a Buddhist. Everyone in the world is an Arahant but me. What's the point? This is why you cannot be made content. If you ever wondered, how come I still want to watch TV? I've watched TV so many hours now. That's why you can't take young people off pornography. They'll watch it today, and at some point they'll be exhausted, but then they'll want to watch it again tomorrow, the following day, because the mind base still wants it. You cannot show anything to the mind base, you can only show things to the mind, to the chitta. That's the thing. You can't show this to the mind base. You can only show it to a chitta. But it's pointless doing that because the mind base is what wants it, but the chitta is what you feed it. It's like if your left hand is itching, you itch the right hand instead. What's the point? Say a mosquito bit your left hand and you're scratching away at your right hand. What's the point? Or you have a rash on your left, you keep eating your right. What's the point? See, here's the thing. Here's where you are helpless. The last thing I'll say for today. Here's why you are helpless. You can't not do this either. You can't stop it. You can't stop it because your mind base wants it. It's dying for it. There's a huge urge for it. It yearns for it. So you can't stop it. But there's no point doing it. Now where do you go? Something that's not worth doing, but you can't not do it either. It's a double whammy, isn't it? It's like paying taxes. You don't want to do it, but you can't not do it either. Now where do you go? Where do you run? Who do you ask for help? Who's your refuge? Here's what people do. They think earning money is the answer to their problems. Here's what earning money does. It gives more of these things. It gives more of these things, more objects. You don't have to wait for any time between two objects. It's always there with you. That's what money does. The more money you have, can you change this system with money? Can you throw dollars at this and sort of like shift this like on its head? So that what you give directly to the mind base? Can you do that? You can't change the way your mind works by throwing money at it. Here's what money does. It just gives you more of the same objects. How are those objects going to be perceived? Once again with chittas. Who needs it? The mind base. Then tell me, how does money bring happiness? Does it? That's why I stopped. That's why I stopped going after money. If you are still on the pursuit of money, thinking that it's going to bring you happiness, dream on, baby. I mean, good luck to you. Seriously, good luck to you. Because you will need a lot of luck. Money is not going to make you happy, folks, and I've just proven it to you. Money can only put more of this stuff. Okay, you don't want this, you want this. Okay, we'll get more of these. And what's better, you don't even have to wait for it to arrive. You can get someone at home to cook this for you. Have a chef, your own chef. Maybe have a butler. Maybe, have a supermarket at home. So whatever you want at your beck and call, it's always there. What's the point? What's the point? Just imagine you had the power to get anything you wanted at the flick of your fingers. Pizza, that's it, and it's there. Chocolate, it's there. No, not that one, white chocolate, it's there. Then you feel like you want to have ice cream. Ice cream, and the menu comes out. Strawberry, it's there. Pistachio, it's there. Ask for whatever. All you can do is give it to the chitta. All you can do is give it to the chitta. The chitta takes it, experiences a moment of pleasure, and passes away. We are back at the mind base. Game over, start again. See, money is not the answer to your problem. You're intelligent people. I don't need to spell things out to you from here on. If you've understood this, you can work on this, you can infer plenty of other things from this. If money is not the answer, do you think a woman is the answer? If there's anyone in this room who believes that they're going to be happy one day when they get settled down with a woman they can call their own, or a man they can call their own, tell me how that would work. Please explain to me. I'm ready to listen to you. It's the mind base that wants it. You give it to the mind, or the chitta. I mean, what is a man or a woman after all? Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, right? Nothing more than that. What do you give it to? The chitta. Chitta rises, takes the sight, and passes away. The mind base is what wants it. It's got nothing. So I ask you, if you believe that the time to come to this asana is in another 10 years' time after you have, got married, settled down, had children, bought property, money, travel the world, go around, do all these things, eat, sleep, have all those things, enjoy life, and then come to this asana so you can start working on the mind base. Huh? Sorry, have I burst your bubble? I hope you understand that I'm not speaking to you out of spite. I'm speaking to you out of immense compassion. Why should I watch you do useless, nonsensical, meaningless, futile things when you come here and expect me, as a Kalyana Mitra, as a noble companion, to point you in the right direction and point out when you're doing something wrong? Should I have to take your alms food and take your pirikara and then just let you walk into the darkness? Is that what you want me to do? Shall I teach you how to live a happy married life? From time to time I will talk about those things. But that is for your sustenance in this world. But that is pointless anyway. Here's the crux. This is the core. Living a happy married life, it's all up here. Living a life of torture, that's also up here. A rich life, up here. A poor life, up here. An educated life, up here. Uneducated, here. Property, here. No property, here. Business, good business, here. Bankrupt, again here. Nothing here. The only way you can touch here is if you listen to the Dhamma that cleanses the mind base of ignorance. Because ignorance is what makes the mind base want and seek and yearn for all these experiences in the outside world. Once you can cleanse the mind of ignorance, now the mind base is quiet, it's tranquil, it's serene, it settles, it stops begging. What you feel inside you is that beg. There's a beggar inside all of you. Inside each and every one of you, if you listen to me, there's a beggar. And that beggar is constantly sending you on its dirty errands. Go find me something to look at. Go find me something to smell. Find me something to taste. Go find me something to hear. Isn't that what your mind is always constantly nagging at you? Isn't that always the case? Well, there's a beggar inside each and every one of you. That beggar is this bugger. The only way to treat that is to feed the dhamma. The last thing I'll say for today, I'm conscious of time again. How then do you feed the dhamma? To the mind base. Because I don't want to leave you stranded. But no questions about this today, okay? As in, after the sermon? No sermon after the sermon. Because I want you to just take this in slowly. Go back and listen to this if you want another time. We'll talk about it again. Don't yonder beyond this. Let's take it one step at a time. How do you heal this? How do you fix this problem? There's only one way. The mind base still has a desire. It wants to see. It wants to hear. The chitta arises. At that point, instead of giving it the object that it wants, you give it the dhamma. Anicca, dukkha and anatta. You give it the dhamma. This chitta takes the dhamma and passes away. Anicca, dukkha and anatta has the ability to cleanse the mind base. Because ignorance lives in the mind base. What is ignorance? Ignorance is a perception of the world, is a wrong perception of the world. It's a misinterpretation of the world. By world, I mean everything that's going on out there. Nicca, sukha and atta. That is what ignorance is. That the world is pleasurable, the world is joyful, the world is wonderful. These experiences are wonderful, that they can bring me happiness. Happiness exists in the outside world. This is your indoctrination. This is what ignorance is. So what you do is you have to piggyback on these chittas. These chittas which come into existence to experience existence, to experience the outside world. You put the dhamma into them. It's a bit like a Trojan horse. You put the dhamma into them, it takes the dhamma back into the mind base. And once it's at the mind base, it cleanses ignorance one bit at a time. One bit at a time. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens one bit at a time. But every time you listen to the Dhamma, every time you contemplate the Dhamma, every time you reflect on the truth, that ignorance is attacked. You shivel away at it. One bit at a time. So the more times you do that, the quicker you can cleanse the mind of ignorance. So if you can keep yourself in an environment where you're constantly fed the Dhamma, what happens then? That ignorance is eradicated much quicker, more rapidly than if you would do it some other way. So what's better? My life, where I'm with the Dhamma 24/7, or your life where you're with the Dhamma on Sunday mornings? Because here's what happens with you. 1/14 of the week, 1/14 of the week, you are given the Dhamma. That Dhamma, you put on the chitta, it takes it back to the mind base and it cleanses ignorance. But 13/14 of the week, you spend your time with other people. They don't give you the Dhamma. They tell you, that the world is a wonderful place. Let's try this, let's try that, let's go out, let's have something to eat, let's go watch that film. Would you like to listen to this song? Right? I've got something really interesting to tell you. Would you like to listen to it? They give you a party, they invite you to one, they ask you to throw the party, they buy you nice things, they buy you flowers, they buy you chocolates, they buy you gifts, they basically indulge you. Each indulgence keeps on reinforcing ignorance. Each indulgence keeps reinforcing ignorance. Each time the Dhamma comes in, it works on ignorance, works at ignorance. That's why I chose the life as a monk. I want to get to Nibbāna as soon as possible, not in my merry time. Because who knows how much merry time I might have. I know that while I'm still alive, I have teachers around me. The Buddha Sasana is here. I have been born into a nation where the Buddha Sasana prevails. All I can be confident about is what I have now in the present. Who knows what's going to happen the moment my heart stops beating? What if I'm born somewhere in Saudi Arabia or in some other part of the world where there's hardly any Dhamma? Then what happens? No anicca dukkha anatta, to cleanse the mind base. All there is either objects. Say I'm born into a royal family. Let's just say I'm born into the royal family. What can the royal family do for me? They can treat me with royalty, meaning they can put as much sight, sound, smells, taste and touch in front of me. All that does is more and more and more of this. Does nothing to the mind base. So if someone actually wants to be happy, there's only one place to be born, and that is the Sambuddha Sasana. If you ever have any dreams and hopes of being born somewhere, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only place where you should set your goals to. Wherever there's a true Sambuddha Sasana, may I be born there if I'm not able to complete my journey in this lifetime. That is the only thing you should wish for. Because after all, everything we do in life, we only do it so that we can be actually happy. Happiness is what you seek, but what you're doing is useless. Because none of those things make you happy. Last thing I have to say then. I've had many last things to say, right? This is the really last thing I have to say. There may be those among you who are considering the noble life, the noble path. This is what I mean by the noble life, not this. There may be among you those who are considering the noble path. Don't delay. Don't delay for two reasons. Number one, if you die before that, end of story. 2025 is the day you're going to get that cancer. Once you get the cancer, don't come and ask me, Swaminatha, can I now come into robes? Because unfortunately, we can't accept you. Number two, every moment you spend out there is a moment where you're constantly kept fed ignorance, objects, and other indoctrinations from the outside world. And this job only becomes harder and harder and harder to do. Because remember, the Dhamma can only cleanse you one bit at a time. The more dirt there is here, the longer it's going to cleanse it. That's why at our monastery, we have a program even for young children. Because that is the best time to start working on them. In a very short period of time, we might be able to get them where we want to get them. Because they are now secure and safe from all the indoctrinations that come from the outside world to completely ruin their minds. Because someone will come and say, if they were on the outside, why don't you become a rich man? Go do a good job. All here, what's the point? It doesn't make them happy. At the end of their lifetime, once they do the numbers, they will realize that that is not happiness. It was not a successful life. They become PhD holders, but not a successful life. They become millionaires, but not a successful life. They become good businessmen, but not a successful life. What's the point then? If you were born crying and you have to die crying, what was the point of all the money you earned during that period? What's the point? Because all of it you have to leave for someone else to take over anyway, once you're gone. All the money you earn that you don't spend is someone else's inheritance. That's all. And you worked hard for it. The time that you had to get yourself to happiness. Sometimes the way you make sacrifices is just mind-boggling to me. You are willing to give up your only chance to work on your salvation, to earn an inheritance for some people that you don't even know yet. Please, ladies and gentlemen, open your eyes. For your sake, open your eyes. Look at what's happening to you right now. Face the facts. This is the truth. I'm sorry that it's as ugly as it looks. It's ugly, I admit. I'm sorry about that. But this is the truth. You look very smart. You're dressed beautifully. Everything else is good about you, except for what you're doing with your life. Everything else is good about you. Even great, I might say. But what you're doing with your life, after you have failed the game, after you have lost the game, no one's going to come and pick up the pieces for you. How much do you do for your dead father? He died last year. All you do is give him an alms giving at the end of the year. 1 year anniversary, you do an alms to him. That's all you do for him. What else can you do for him? Can you give him the dhamma? No. When you die, the same thing is going to happen with your children. They'll do the Sattavasadana, the Tummasadana, 1 year dana, that's it. After that, you'll just be a forgotten story. That's why you are your own saviors. No one else can save you. That's why the Buddha says, Buddhists can only show the path. You have to work on yourself. Every time you're out there, every time you're contemplating false and falsehoods and lies and what people put into your head, rubbish that you see on TV, rubbish that you watch on the internet, rubbish that you read on the newspapers, rubbish that the people that you call friends keep putting into your heads. Every time they do that, ignorance just keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing with no hope ever to cleanse your mind base in this lifetime. And then this life will be just a repeat of your last life. Do you think in your last life you found happiness? In the life before this, do you think you found happiness? What's the evidence? You're here now. Meaning whatever you did in your last life was a waste of time. That's why you're back here, to do it again. What if you waste your life this time as well? Sansara. I speak on your behalf. You might think I'm hurting your feelings by saying some of the things I say. You might think I'm being offensive. I'm not intentionally. No one speaks to you like this, that's the problem. If anyone else does, let me know and I'll keep shut. If your mother speaks to you like this, let me know. Then I need not worry. If your father loves you so dearly and he speaks to you like this, let me know and I'll keep quiet. But they are none the wiser. They're in the same pit. How can they save you? If your best friend does this for you, you let me know and I'll keep quiet. If I stop talking to you, who's going to save you? Who is going to remind you that you are the one who has to save yourself? That's what I say. If you can come to the sasana today, don't wait till tomorrow. 2 things can happen by tomorrow. 1, you can be dead. 2, you're only going to make your life difficult. You're only going to make this job far more difficult than it is today. Because all the time you spend outside, people just keep on dumping things on your mind. And all that all that garbage, I'm not the one who's going to cleanse it for you. You have to cleanse it yourself. Good luck. Let's leave it at that. If anything I said hurt your feelings or you found offensive, I apologize. It was not intended in that way. I only speak like this because I care. I could just come and give you a Jataka tale and walk away. What's the point? A Jataka tale is a story about another man's failure. Why do you want to listen to another one of those? Yes, the Bodhisattva and merits by going through those, but that's all he did. That was not a life where he attained Buddhahood. What's the point? Right, we'll continue the conversation next week then. So it's the end of the year, last sermon for this year. I hope you were not expecting confetti and parties. You don't come to this sermon and expect that, do you? You come here for a taste of realism, a taste of reality. But I hope I've given you something to think in the new year. So that's my New Year's gift to you. To open your eyes, to see what's happening with your life. Do you want 2025 to be the same as 2024? Which was the same as 2023? Which was the same as 2022? Which was the same as all the lives you've had in samsara? Or do you want to make a change? Do something useful, do something productive, do something meaningful with your life, ladies and gentlemen. It matters not where you've come from, what religion you are, because this is not a religion. This is a religion I just talked to you about. This is a philosophy, this is the science of the mind, no religion. Is there anything here you have to believe just out of blind faith? Anything? This is logical. This is science. This is true science. This is how your mind works. Nothing to do with religion. So if you're a Muslim, does this not apply to you? If you're a Christian, does this not apply to you? Do you have to be a Buddhist for this to apply to you? What nonsense. The Buddha's teaching is not for Buddhists. It's for anyone who has a mind. If you have a mind, then the Buddha's teaching is for you. And that is quite literally the last thing I'm going to say. Let's take a moment then to transfer the merits that we have all acquired by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, listening to the Dhamma and creating a conducive environment for all to come along and practice the teaching. First and foremost, let us take this opportunity to transfer all the merits that we have acquired to the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasakas and upasikas who have since time immemorial protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha and passed it down through the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, understand and comprehend the Dhamma. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to all monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries, as well as the Mahanayakas and the Anunayakas of all of the chapters throughout the world who dedicated their lives to the noble path. Let us also transfer these merits to my teacher, Guru Swami Mahanse, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery and the Anagarikas and the Anagarikas attached to the monastery. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these talks, sharing them out with others or inviting others to join them. May they all rejoice in these merits. Let us also transfer these merits to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits to help them attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna, continue to sustain the Mahasangha, This is all of you who provide the Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes and medicines, as well as pass on their know-how and continue to extend their well-wishes. May they all rejoice in these merits. May by the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcoming obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our friends, our acquaintances, our employers, our employees, our teachers, and anyone and everyone who've helped us, supported us, and assisted us in any way, shape, or form possible and available to them. May they all rejoice in these merits, and by the power of these merits, may they also be freed of any physical and mental ailments and overcoming obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakadeva, as well as all the numerous gods and deities who have helped us to fulfill and preserve the Sambhuddha Sasana. Let us transfer these merits to your guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over you and keep you out of harm's way. May they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to those who passed away in your name, your loved ones, your forefathers, your ancestors, reminding yourselves that it is in their blood, sweat and tears today you are able to enjoy the comforts of life and practice the path in peace and harmony. Let us also transfer these merits to members of the armed forces as well as the police force who sacrifice their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation, as well as those who might have lost their lives in the war, be they friend or foe. Let us also transfer these merits to those who have lost their lives in natural disasters and calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, fires, pandemics and so on, reminding ourselves that in this infinitely long journey of samsara, they will all have been mothers and fathers to us, friends to us, acquaintances to us, and therefore with an abundance of compassion and loving kindness towards all of them, let us transfer all the merits that we have acquired throughout the year to all of them. May by the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful planes, they redeem themselves to be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may by the power and blessings of all the merits we have acquired today, as well as all the sermons that we've been doing throughout the year, and all the meritorious deeds you have been engaged in throughout the year, either here or at the monastery or anywhere else for that matter, may by the power of all those merits combined, individually and even collectively, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of arahants on this blessed land, and may you and I and everyone who's helped make this program a success become a Rahatan Vahanse or an Arahat Theranin Vahanse in this life itself and in the era of this Sambhuddha Sasana itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Ragaginnen nidetva Dveshaginnen nidetva Mohaginnen nidetva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravetva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravetva Mamada siyalu loka Siyalu satvayo Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravetva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravetva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravetva Ragagini niveva Dveshagini niveva Mohagini niveva සැප ලැබේවා. තුන්රුවන්ගේ සුවිසි අනන්ත මහා ගුණ බලෙන් සියලු ලෝක සියලු සත්වයෝම නිබ්බාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුඛතර වෙත්වා. සාදු සාදු සාදු.